And hello, everyone. Good evening and happy Tuesday to you. If you happen to be in New England like I am, it got hot as all get out. You gotta love it when, like a month ago, we were in freezing temperatures and now we were in a heat advisory. Ah, New England. Well, welcome back, everybody. I am glad to have you here as we continue our reading of The Blacksmith's Boy by Bruce Buchanan. Read for you, of course, by your friendly narrator, Tim Maloney. Bringing the written word to life, professional narrator, live reader. That's what I am, amongst many other things. My daughter yelled at me today and told me I do too many things. I told her, I'm doing them anyway. So, glad to have you here with me tonight. Let's start by doing what we normally do and talking a little bit about what happened in our last reading. So, last time it was directly after assassins had attacked our fearless crew, and they decided they needed to get the flock out of the inn that they were in. The inn that they were in? The inn. So we started out where the group was tending to the wounded and hastily moving Aventil and Corrigan to a secure safe house, which happened to be the empty house of one of Aventil's friends. Bach continued his healing work while everyone else grappled with the growing danger and what it meant for their mission. Then Bach woke early and checked on the injured. He had a deep conversation with Tovano about magic, practiced a remarkable new spell, and began wrestling with the shocking implications for his own life and family. Tovano continued teaching Bach throughout this. He shared his discovery with Isabella that Bach possesses the acumen for high magic and is likely of noble birth because only nobles are supposed to have acumen for high magic. Bach is stunned and wonders how that is possible. Maybe we find out more as time goes on. Bach threw himself into chores to cope with the bombshell of his heritage. He grappled with the questions about his family, his identity, and what it means to be noble-born, while he still feels like the blacksmith's boy from Sola Valley. The party was preparing to leave towards Oso Creek, their eventual desired location, and Bach, processes everything that he has learned while the group deals with the practical realities of travel and the ongoing threat that they face. In chapter 24, Bach looks up to see a scrawny young woman with stringy hair wielding an iron skillet. The group encountered that figure still in the safe house, found out that it was basically the housekeeper of the owners of the house, and that person was bound and determined, once she figured out who they were, to go with them, but they declined her abilities to do so. And then they finished preparing to head out. And heading out is where we will pick up the stream tonight, as they continue their journey towards Oso Creek. As a reminder, I do record all of these chapters, which means that while I am reading the chapter itself, I won't be able to respond to questions from you guys, but I will be happy to respond to any thoughts, comments, anything else that you have in between chapters. Or, of course, you are always welcome to talk to each other. A great way to be able to do it. If you have missed any of the previous readings, because we are starting on chapter 26, if you have missed any of the previous ones, they are all available on my YouTube channel. youtube.com/@SirArminius. You can also stop out and pick up the book. It is available on Amazon. You can go to the publisher's website to pick up the ebook, Wild Ink Publishing, or you can go to the author's website, brucebuchananauthor.com. All of those links are in the descriptions on both the YouTube and Rumble channels, in case you forget. I have direct links for you. And now, sit back, relax, and prepare to enjoy as we dive into another night of reading from our indie author, Bruce Buchanan, and his book, The Blacksmith's Boy. Chapter 26. They arrived in Oso Creek mid-afternoon. Cotton fields blanketed the land with white as far as Bach's sight extended, but that was all he could see or hear. Anyone else notice something strange about this place?
Yes, Tovano replied. Where are the people who should be tending these fields? At this time of day, field hands should be working, but we haven't seen another soul for miles.
The answers to those questions came a half-mile down the road. The group encountered 24 or so people carrying children, livestock, and any possessions they could transport by hand. By their homespun clothing, Bach recognized them as serving class, probably the very farm hands he noticed missing. They walked as fast as a group this large could manage. Isabella waved.
"Hello, good people. Is something amiss, and may we help?"
But the group didn't stop to talk.
You and your fancy friends need to turn around, one man said.
Maybe they'll listen to one of their own. Bach climbed off his horse to meet the travelers at eye level. Why? Because of what happened at the Yult family farm? We heard about something strange there, but we know nothing more.
"No, you don't," a woman laughed bitterly. "This land is cursed. We've lost everything save our lives. If we stay here jabbering with you any longer, we'll lose those too."
The farmers hurried on, leaving Bach, Isabella, and company confused and concerned. Unfortunately, the situation became clearer when they cleared the next hill and saw black ash where lush fields should have been. The blight had spread far beyond the Yult farm. Scores of acres, farms, and farmhouses now were dust. An invisible fist slammed into Bach's midsection. He rubbed his eyes in a failed effort to blot out the emptiness before him. All those farms. They weren't all empty when the wave of destruction hit. I would bet on it. "By the Exalted One," Aventil whispered. Isabella dismounted. Her hands shook, but she took command.
"Come, we have no time to waste. Bach, begin your assessments. Tovano and Kotarian, the three of us will prepare further spells depending on his findings. Aventil, help Corrigan and Wingate with the horses and return here as soon as you can."
The others quickly followed her lead, heads down to the devastation in front of them. Kotarian's voice cracked. I never imagined it would be this bad." No one else spoke, but they scrambled into action. With shaky hands, Bach handed Becky's reins to Aventil. His chest drew tight. If we can't learn the truth about the blight here and now, it may be too late for anyone else to do so. Too late for my family, too. Bach unpacked his healer's bag on a patch of unaffected ground. "Stay back. We don't know if it may still be dangerous." Aventil crossed his arms. "How do we know this blight won't come back while we're here?"
"We do not," Isabella replied. "So we must move quickly. Bach, your talents as a healer of this land will guide us as we cycle back through the devastation done here."
"I will try." Despite his lingering questions about Isabella's conversation with Tovano, her supportive words swelled his heart. He donned his heavy riding gloves for protection, pulled a strand of sage out of his bag, and scattered it across the nearest piece of the blighted soil. After a deep breath, Bach began his incantations. When working with farmers, one of Bach's folk magic spells assessed the soil to determine how it had changed over time. The answers helped him decide how best to replenish and heal the land. But it was a tricky process, and the damage he examined here was far more extensive and mysterious than flooding or locusts or any of the other natural ills he normally encountered. Bach closed his eyes and listened for the folk magic to respond. He felt the spell flow out of his hands, through the air and across the ground in front of him. Like fingers, the magic sifted through the ruined soil, probing it. The rest of the party undoubtedly watched him intently, but he forced that uncomfortable thought out of his mind and focused on the spell. One lapse in concentration, and it could be ruined. He remembered Wendy Khan's guidance as she trained him in the art of folk magic. Waggling a wrinkled finger, she said, "The magic knows the answer, Bach, but you have to give it time to speak." Bach heeded that wisdom, and the folk magic responded with the answers he needed. He stood and dusted off his gloves. One bit of good news. The blackened soil is no longer destructive and is safe to the touch. Whatever evil caused this devastation has passed. Isabella exhaled. "Do you know the cause of this blight?" "No, but I know what didn't cause it. No fire caused this, nor is it the result of any poison or insect or anything else occurring in nature. That leaves one possibility." "Magic," Isabella nodded, Bach having confirmed her long-standing suspicions. "Tovano, Kotarian, join me and see if we can determine its origin." The three sorcerers formed a triangle around the patch of ground Bach had probed. Each of the three then began an incantation to reveal the spell signature cast on the blighted ground. Tovano had described a spell signature to Bach as being as unique as any fingerprint. Find that spell signature, and you will reveal its caster. 3 circles of dark blue light appeared on the ground, as if cast by invisible candles. The 3 spellcasters each stepped into one of the circles. Runes and letters appeared in the light, but no one untrained in high magic. They appeared to be simply gibberish. Thanks to the rudimentary training Tovano had given him, Bach spotted an occasional pattern in the marks. However, the spell was far too complex, and its revelations coming too fast for him to make sense of it. So he waited. Well, his spell had taken 30 minutes at most. Isabella, Kotarian, and Tovano continued their magical inquiry for 1 hour. Then another. They remained within the circles of blue light, unaware of anything going on outside of its diameter, unable to communicate with their colleagues in any way. "This is the downside to having a sorcerer for a girlfriend," Aventil nudged Bach's shoulder. "You spend a lot of your time doing nothing while they look at light shows." He pulled some bread and cheese from the basket Umra had prepared that morning and sat cross-legged on the black ground. "And I seem to do a lot of nothing." Bach's attention focused on Corrigan, however. The Guardian had said little in the past few hours. Bach noticed the man's gait grew increasingly shaky and his face wan. "Let me check your wounds." Bach took his healer's bag and approached the trembling Guardian. Corrigan attempted to bake off, but Bach insisted he recline on the ground for an examination. He placed his hand on the man's forehead, and it was hot to the touch. When he unwrapped Corrigan's bandages, Bach recoiled at how puffy and red his shoulder had become. He pressed his knees together while he regained his composure. Bach cleaned the wound, administered a poultice, and wrapped it again. But my skills as a healer mean little if my patient won't rest. Wingate approached once Corrigan had drifted off into a light sleep, aided by a double dose of Bach's Yorka root.
"How is he doing? And please, be truthful."
Bach rubbed his tired eyes. "Most men would not be able to stand. I have no idea how he keeps going. His wound is infected. Still, I believe he can recover if we can get him off the trail and into a bed for a few weeks."
"That will not happen until the mission is complete," Wingate offered. "But I will take care of him the rest of the way. And Bach,
Thank you.
Halfway into their third hour of scrying, Tovano ceased his spell, prompting Isabella and Kotarian to do the same. The blue lights blinked off, taking with them the cryptic messages that the sorcerers had been decoding. Craning their necks, Bach and Aventil waited for their friend's report. Isabella panted and hunched over to catch her breath. Black dust stained her pant legs and dulled the sheen of her riding boots. As expected, the spell signature of the sorcerer, or sorcerers, behind the blight was shrouded by a second spell. Bach handed her a water jug. She knelt and took a long drink before continuing. But Tovano guided Kotarian and me in unraveling the camouflaging spell. Once we did, we found the true author of the blight.
The Morsorks,
Kotarian sneered.
More specifically, an old Morsork sorcerer named Wunebo Pran.
Aventil nodded. They have long wanted to avenge their crushing defeat at Imarina's hands 300 years past. But the Morsork Empire doesn't have the magical capabilities to launch a large-scale attack.
Wunebo Pran is regarded as a competent enough sorcerer for a Morsork,
Kotarian said.
But I wouldn't have thought him capable of high magic of this magnitude.
Nor would I. Isabella shook her head. Truth be told, I would not think even the most powerful sorcerer could harness these forces. Something does not feel right about this result. Almost like the answer was too easy to come by. I fear we are being led astray. Kotarian threw his hands above his head.
By Treganian's turgid torment! Your father sent you to get an answer about this blight, but you didn't get the answer you wanted. So now you don't want to accept it? I regret my bluntness, Your Majesty. However, I must say that may be how things work in the royal palace, but in the House of Magic.
Bach stepped between Kotarian and the princess. Trust your instincts, Isabella. He knew little of high magic, and even less about the centuries-old tensions between the crown and the House of Magic. But he trusted Isabella's judgment. If she had doubts, they should be explored. Aventil put his arm around her shoulder. Bach's right. Trust yourself, my love. And Kotarian, by the Exalted One, must you always be so insufferable? He continued. The real question, I suppose, is how do you know for sure? If the spell you just cast didn't give you the right answer, and if Bach's prodding and poking didn't unearth the truth, what else can we do? Isabella stood back up. I have one idea. When I was a girl, I used to watch my mother paint in our garden. She could sit at her easel for hours. Sometimes she would start over, covering one painting with a fresh layer of paint to create a new picture. But in certain spots, if you scratched at the outer layer of paint, you still could see a vague outline of the original work. Expelling a deep breath, she dusted off her pants. I say we keep going. Push past the spell signature we unlocked. It will not be easy, and we may find nothing. But the truth is too important.
This is absurd, Kotarian moaned. All three of us arrived at the same answer, including me. There is no need for us to continue.
Well, no one said you had to be a part of it, Grey Jacket, Aventil snapped. You can pout, while Isabella and Tovano do the work. Tovano nodded in agreement.
Your Majesty, what you say makes a great deal of sense. Any sorcerer powerful enough to create such a force may be skilled enough to create such a sophisticated falsehood. But such an exercise in collaborative magic will require precision, care, patience, not raw mystical power. We must disrupt the enchanted soil as little as possible, slowly peeling back the events of recent weeks. The forces who cast this spell did so consciously to hide their tracks, and we must be even more deliberate in uncovering them.
Kotarian raised his hand above his head.
You aren't restarting this spell without me. By subterranean subtle scream, you need my expertise if you have any hope of success. Just give me a moment, and the house's shining light once will again lead the way.
Isabella finished her water and grinned.
Indeed, my friend. Lead on.
After a short rest, the trio recast their discovery spell. They had to start over from the beginning, taking the same care as before to ensure the incantation's path remained on course. The conjuring went on for hours, until deep into the night. Bach wished he had the knowledge and training to help. His companions' heads drooped and shoulders slumped within the greenish circles of eldritch light. But he could do nothing for his exhausted friends, except wait and watch. The landscape provided little stimulation, just an ocean of dark ash that ended at the edge of a nearby forest. Bach missed the normal sounds of birds chirping and small animals rooting for food. He looked at the pine trees 100 yards away or so. The shift from black to green, death to life, sent a shiver down the back of Bach's neck. He, Aventil, Corrigan, and Wingate maintained a vigil surrounding the three sorcerers, protecting them from outside harm and awaiting some definitive answers as to what entity brought them to Oso Creek. Those answers came a couple of hours before daybreak. The three spells ended almost simultaneously. Tovano collapsed to his knees, kicking up a cloud of black ash around him. Wingate rushed to give the man water. Kotarian staggered off into the dark field, his eyes glazed over. He clutched his stomach as though he might vomit. Isabella stood in place, neither speaking nor moving. Her dust-streaked face didn't change expression.
My sweet, what happened? What did you learn?
Aventil put his arm around her, and she leaned into the tall noble. A single sob escaped her throat, but her eyes were too dry for tears.
A Mosork sorcerer did not cause the blight. This atrocity was a house of magic spell,
she whispered in a parched, raw voice.
Salandrian cast the blight. Oh no, not Salandrian.
Whatever will we do, ladies and gentlemen? We will drink water, 'cause it's hot out here. In fact, I'm going to turn on the fan in my room here. You can see it behind me. What is that, 85 degrees? 85 degrees in here. 82. I was reading the 2 backwards. 82 degrees in here. I just need a little breeze coming through. All right, for those of you guys who may have been with us for a little while, if I recall correctly, Salandrian is the head of the House of Magic. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's a different one of them. But either way, it's going to be intriguing. Shall we pick it up from there and learn more? I believe we shall. Chapter 27.
Salandrian, the Dean of the House of Magic? The short, balding fellow with the ill-fitting clothes and the pile of dusty books? Are you certain?
Aventil's questions echoed the thoughts running through Bach's mind.
Completely certain. We all saw it. Even Kotarian.
Isabella's hands trembled. Bach handed her a cup of coffee from the campfire, and she took it eagerly.
There is no doubt.
She looked up at her lover and her friend.
We must get back to Ethanel as soon as possible. My father, the very kingdom,
is in terrible peril. I understand. We should wait until the sun rises. Besides, we all need a rest, as short as it may be. But we will be ready to leave soon.
Aventil then stepped away to speak with Wingate and Corrigan. Bach started to follow, but Isabella grabbed his arm.
Come, sit with me. I need someone to talk to.
Of course. He unwrapped a package of Umra's crusty bread and sharp cheese. Isabella gobbled 2 pieces of cheese.
I appreciate your good work, Bach. We could not have found the truth, unpleasant though it may be, without your efforts.
Thank you. I'm sorry you had to receive such bad news. We will do everything we can to defend your father. I promise. She nodded and sipped her coffee.
I know. I could not ask for a more loyal group. It is just... I never would have thought one of our nobles, a man who has worked with my father in the council chamber for years, would betray us.
She set her cup on the ground, folded her hands at her waist, and sat slump-shouldered. I recognize that look, Isabella. But you must not blame yourself. No one could have ferreted out Salandrian's treason. He's probably been planning this for years, and he covered his tracks well.
Are you certain mind-reading is not a folk magic ability?
She smiled a little, the light of the campfire reflecting off her face. Bach laughed, then looked skyward. No, but snooping may be. I may have listened into your conversation with Tovano yesterday. She looked up, her eyes wide. Bach scrambled to add, I apologize. I should not have eavesdropped. But when I heard the two of you discussing me, my curiosity got the best of me.
Well, that is understandable. I would be curious too, if my life had been completely upended.
She fished a square of chocolate out of the picnic bundle.
Do not make eavesdropping a habit, though.
Thank you. And I certainly won't. Bach exhaled.
But I have to ask, what did Tovano mean that I could become a risk to the kingdom? Surely you do not think I could ever turn against you or your father?
Isabella stared incredulously.
Oh, Bach, is that what you thought we meant? That I no longer trust you, now that you can use high magic? I trust you with my life, Bach. What Tovano meant, and what I agreed with, is that high magic can be dangerous if the user does not know what they are doing. That is why he wants to train you. But I never doubted your loyalty, my sweet friend. Not for a second.
Bach swallowed past the lump in his throat. Good. I may not understand exactly what is happening, but I absolutely want to be here, to protect my family and defend the kingdom. You are our leader, and I am with you, all the way. Finally, Bach again saw the smile which had made his heart skip a beat back in Ithanel. So, that was the extent of Tovano's concern? There's nothing else about my past or my powers that I need to know?
No, nothing.
Isabella pulled him into a jasmine-scented hug, but she did not look into his eyes.
You are a good friend, Bach Umat. Better than I deserve.
She took his forearms in her hands.
The princess and the blacksmith's boy, together until the end.
Until the end. Bach hoped those words wouldn't prove literal in the days to come. He also knew for certain that Isabella was keeping something from him. From across the dusty field, Aventil hailed Isabella. Hey, if you are done with Bach, I could use you over here. She waved goodbye and went to join her boyfriend. Bach stood up and stretched. Whatever she was hiding would have to wait. For now, his friend had more than enough to deal with, and so did he. His family and the kingdom were in peril, and he and Isabella would face that threat together. Bach squinted. Something moved through the sky. Coming in from the direction of the forest, 4 greenish-blue globes. Were they stars? No, they were too big and moved, floated up, and then arced down toward the makeshift camp. Isabella ran toward him, screaming, "Bach, take cover!" She could say no more before the night exploded in a silent flash of green-blue light.
Oh no, what is going to happen?
So I was wrong. It wasn't the head of the House of Magic. It was like the scholar in charge of all their knowledge. Bad enough, right? Bad enough. Short chapter, let's dive right back into Chapter 28. Cough, cough. The explosions kicked up choking clouds of black dust. Bach struggled to clear his eyes and throat. His ears rang from the thunderclaps of the blasts. Through the haze, Isabella crawled toward him. Black dirt streaked her olive complexion. A trickle of blood ran down her forearm, sticking out through a ripped sleeve. "Isabella!" Bach's throat closed as his fists clenched the dark ash. "Bach, shield now!" she sputtered. As one, they cast defensive shields in time to deflect another wave of magical attacks. 4 sorcerers clad in the black jackets of the Scions of Cenarion stepped forward from the edge of the blackened field. Isabella could barely stand, and Bach was less than a week into his high magic studies. He hardly was prepared to battle 4 skilled sorcerers. "Leave me, Bach. Go to Ithanel. Warn my father." Isabella blocked a 3rd attack. Bach doubted she had the reserves to counter a 4th. "No, they'll kill you." She pushed him away with her left hand, while her right glowed faintly with her remaining magical energy. "You must, for the sake of the kingdom." "I won't abandon you to die." Bach looked toward the approaching sorcerers. They walked steadily, blue-green auras shining brightly. One even wore a smile. Bach's heart thrummed against the walls of his chest. A reptile voice in the back of his brain urged him to run, but he ignored it and planted his boots on the ash-covered ground. "Whatever happens, I'll stand here beside my friend." Before the final blow came, an arrow flew between Bach and Isabella and struck one of the sorcerers in the neck. He collapsed dead in an instant. His 3 partners turned to him and away from Bach and Isabella. The distraction broke the spells they had been preparing.
"Get away, you bloodthirsty jackals! By the Exalted One, I have 3 more arrows to bury in your hearts."
As if to prove his words, Aventil fired again. This time, though, the Scions of Cenarion were ready. His 2nd arrow transmuted into a harmless bouquet of flowers and fell to the ground. One of the sorcerers, a young woman, pointed in his direction.
"Kill the bowman fast."
But before they could make good on that threat, a burst of hurricane force wind pushed the evil trio backward, forcing them to shield their eyes from the dust storm.
"Aladrian, what are you doing?"
Kotarian held his hand in front of him, palm first, as if he literally pushed the wind toward his former House of Magic colleagues.
"Your actions bring shame to our house."
Aladrian extended her own hand, and Kotarian's spell abruptly stopped.
"I wondered when you'd make your grand entrance. That Bognonian's bellicose breeze spell needs work, though. Our teachers would have awarded you unsatisfactory marks had they seen how easily I countered it."
"You betray our teachers in the house,"
Kotarian spat.
They taught us to use magic for the good of Imarina. Instead, you serve what exactly? Chaos? Treason? Death?
The house's shining light isn't gleaming very brightly, is he?
Aladrin flexed her fingers, which continued to glow blue-green.
Our true leader did nothing but reveal the true path. Imarina has strayed from its traditions, allowed outside influences and decadent beliefs to taint our once great nation. But those of us who follow the true leader, the scions of Sonarian, will lead it back to greatness.
You are insane. Absolutely insane,
Kotarian whispered. The scions of Sonarian prepared to renew their attack, but Aventil and Kotarian had given Wingate time to act. He rode furiously through the black dirt, pulling the reins of the other horses behind him. Without slowing, he scooped Isabella up with one arm and deposited her behind him on his horse. She repaid the favor by blocking another exploding globe of blue-green light headed directly toward Wingate.
Hold on, your majesty. We must retreat.
Wingate dodged yet another mystical projectile. Bach, Aventil, and Kotarian quickly mounted their own horses and rode toward Wingate and Isabella, away from the fight. The Guardian headed for the trees at the edge of the destroyed farmland. They met Karagian at the edge of the field and raced into the still dark woods. Flat patches of soil gave way to thick clusters of pine trees, green undergrowth, and more than a few tree roots jutting out of the ground. The chances of a horse tripping or twisting its leg in the woods weren't small, but Bach knew those odds were better than remaining within range of the spellcaster's deadly magics. The pine trees formed almost an umbrella over the forest sky. They could no longer see or be seen by the scions of Sonarian, but that didn't stop the rogue sorcerers from launching more wide-range attacks into the woods. Magic globes floated through the night sky. One of them struck a pine tree just yards from Bach. It exploded into a shower of bark and splinters, filling the air with the brisk smell of resin. Becky flinched, and Bach eased her reins to sidestep the shattered, smoking stump. Sizzling bolts of magical lightning streaked past them through the trees. One of them cinched the elbow of Bach's sleeve. A tremor ran through his body as he patted the smoldering fabric. That would have taken my arm had it been an inch closer.
Keep the horses focused. Straight ahead,
Karagian called.
Don't let them be scared.
The same advice applied to the riders. At the commander's urging, Bach focused on moving as quickly as possible out of the field of danger. Bach held his breath and whispered silent prayers. After a few uneasy moments, the explosions behind them stopped. The group slowed their pace to a more cautious trot. Still, they continued to move, in case their enemies pursued them. Becky grunted, but reluctantly kept going when Bach gently shook her reins. He looked ahead of the others. The night was so dark it was hard to see more than a few yards ahead. The tree canopy blocked off most of the ambient light, but one of their number appeared to be missing. Wait, where's Tovano? He wasn't there for the battle. I thought he was with you, Karagian.
Haven't seen him in a half hour. Thought he would be with the princess and you.
What? We must go back.
Isabella brought her horse and the rest of the group to a full stop.
We cannot abandon Tovano.
Aventil nudged his horse beside hers. My love, we must keep moving. Your safety and the outcome of this mission are too important, even for Tovano. Believe me, he would be the first to agree. Isabella pumped her fists at her side.
No, I refuse to accept that. Aventil, do not ask me to betray a mentor and a friend.
A rustle in the brush interrupted their argument. Through the still gloomy early morning, Bach thought it might have been deer, but then a woman's voice boomed.
Drop your weapons and dismount. This will be your only warning.
The group turned to see one, then two, then a half-dozen armed riders emerge from the woods into the clearing. Although he had never seen most Sork marauders before, Bok knew he was in their presence. The half-dozen iron swords pointed at him and his friends merely confirmed that fact. T-Biribi 1371. Hey, thanks. Appreciate your stopping by. If you have missed, any of the story, which I imagine you probably have, all of the chapters before now, so chapter 27, 26, 25, I forget where I stopped last time, 25, I think. 25 and earlier are all available on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius, or you can always stop out and pick up the author's book on Amazon, the ebook through Amazon or wildinkpublishing.com, or you could check out the author's website, which is brucebuchananauthor.com. But glad to have you here with us. I hope you are enjoying it. Did I miss recording the last one? I hope not. That would be bad. Let's see, 25, 26, 27, 28. Nope, I didn't. I just must have. Oh no, I did miss recording one of them. No! I'm going to have to re-record chapter 28, it looks like. Crap. My button did not press. I hate when that happens. Because that is definitely not the right one. Some of my gibbles. I can go get it from my recordings. I will have to do that. All right, well, back at it, everyone. Back at it. Here we go with Chapter 29. Pink and black dye streaked both the riders' hair and the manes of their horses. The same colors adorned their clothes. The male riders were shirtless, and the women wore tops that could better be described as sashes. Regardless of gender, each rider sported multiple silver and gold necklaces. Such outfits indicated the wearer's membership in a particular outlaw group, and if they made their enemies afraid, all the better. Pushing Aventil aside, Isabella strode to the front of the group. "We are a traveling party of merchants on official business of King Isbiano. You are trespassing on Imarinian soil. Turn around now and avoid a serious conflict between our two nations." A tall woman rode forward. She never stopped holding her sword toward Isabella. "That remains to be seen. But if you are a peaceful band of merchants, explain why you were engaged in magical combat on the other side of these woods." "And as for trespassing, you entered the glorious Reja Lehir's divinely granted territory 500 yards ago." Oh no! The muscles in Bok's legs went weak. We were in such a hurry to escape that we didn't realize we crossed the border. Hearing no explanations, the Masork soldiers forced the group to walk deeper into their territory. After a while, the forest gave way to a grass-covered clearing that extended as far as Bok could see. The rising sun baked him and his friends. Within minutes, sweat soaked his tunic. The conditions proved particularly brutal to the injured Koragian, who, after an hour of walking, stopped and slumped to his knees. He gasped for breath as perspiration poured down his face. Bok stepped out of line to help him and was shoved back by the flat of a Mosork sword against his chest.
"Fine. Just give me a minute."
Corrigan waved off his fellow prisoners. "Get up now, or we'll leave you here." The Mosork leader shoved Corrigan's back, near his injured shoulder, with the point of her steel-toed boot. He winced and slumped forward.
"You devils!"
Aventil struggled toward the commander, but two Mosork soldiers grabbed his arms and wrestled him back in line. Wingate picked Corrigan up in his arms.
"I will carry him from here."
The Mosork leader said nothing, but she pointed her sword, indicating they should continue walking. Fortunately, the forced march ended soon, when they arrived at a large temporary encampment on a riverbank. Dozens of marauders moved in and out of makeshift lean-to huts constructed from pine branches, toting water and supplies into the campsite. The pink and black-haired leader of the Masork group stopped them at the entrance to a spacious, empty hut near the center of the camp. "In here." She pushed Isabella hard in the back, and the princess stumbled forward. Bach ground his teeth. Protesting would only make matters worse. Inside the tent, soldiers bound each Imarinian with rope and ordered them to sit on the straw-strewn floor. Karagian could barely sit up, but he still did so, seemingly in defiance of his physical plight as well as his captivity. Aventil breathed in short, angry bursts like a mad bull and stared directly at the half-dozen Masork soldiers in front of them. Bach had no doubt his fiery friend would have fought the entire group single-handedly if given the opportunity. Isabella, on the other hand, took deep, slow breaths. Bach recognized it as Tovano's technique for sorcerers to clear their minds in a time of crisis. Kotarian writhed and struggled helplessly against his bonds.
"What do these awful people want with?"
"Silence!" The Masork leader and the other soldiers knelt on a single knee and bowed their heads. Bach did as well, just to be safe. "I present the glorious Raja Lair." Bach looked up and beheld a man Yata undoubtedly would have described as a banty rooster. Barely taller than Isabella, the bare-chested warlord sported a thick, powerful build. His matted pink and black hair hung nearly to his waist, as did his matching beard. Salmon-colored silk ribbons festooned the man's ebony trousers, and 10 or more gold necklaces hung around his neck to his protruding belly. He shoved a greasy piece of meat in his mouth when he entered the hut, then licked his fingers clean with loud slurping sounds. 2 muscular bodyguards, swords and daggers dangling from their belts, stepped inside the hut to either side of the man, and a servant girl knelt by his feet.
"Ho! Princess Isabella Inishari of Imarina. So nice to have you visit my kingdom."
In truth, Raja Lair was one of 20 or so warlords who controlled relatively small pieces of territory within the Masork Empire. But each claimed he or she was the rightful monarch of the entire nation.
"Come to see your father's handiwork in person, villain."
Isabella scrunched her eyebrows. "My father's handiwork? Glorious Raja Lair, I do not know of what you speak. We were sent here to investigate a bizarre phenomenon on the Imarinian side of the border. We were attacked, not by your soldiers, to be clear, and during the battle, we accidentally trespassed across your nation's borders. If you would graciously allow us to proceed on our way, our kingdom will send you a generous restitution of gold and goods, plus a handwritten letter of apology from me."
"Leaving?" he chortled. "Forget your father and the royal council, little princess. You have much more important matters to answer for here."
The warlord's soldiers nodded their silent agreement. "I do not know what you mean. We literally just crossed your land mere moments before your soldiers captured us." Raja Lair snorted, then snapped his fingers for the servant girl to bring him another plate of meat.
"Just crossed into your land. Tell me, little princess, do you take me for a complete fool? You have been here for days, if not longer, seeking to assassinate me."
Isabella recoiled at the accusation, but otherwise maintained her calm demeanor. "Again, glorious Raja Lair, we apologize for our brief intrusion, but on my word as a fellow sovereign, I promise we have done no such thing." Sweat dripped down Bach's face. The canvas hut trapped the summer heat like his father's brick stove. The hard ground made his back ache. The golden straw covering it provided little padding. But he dared not move. The Masork warlord sneered at Isabella as he handed the plate back to the servant girl. She popped up from where she knelt on the floor, took the plate, and returned to her kneeling position, all without lifting her face. He turned his back to the prisoners and folded his arms across his chest. His deep, angry breaths bounced off the hut's walls. I've heard that sound before, when a bull is furious and ready to charge the first creature it sees. After a full minute of silence, he pivoted, eyes building.
Then why have 5 acres of our land been reduced to black ash? 3 days ago, no more than 2 miles away, and you just happened to be nearby with 3 sorcerers among you.
He snatched a full cup of wine from the lone table in the hut and flung it across the room. The purple liquid soaked into the straw. And you think we are responsible? Isabella responded.
What else am I supposed to believe?
Believe this, glorious Regia Leer. We came to Oso Creek to investigate this very thing. We call it the Blight, and it has infected our land as well. Whoever attacked you also attacked us.
Isabella tried unsuccessfully to make eye contact. Despite the incredibly tense nature of the conversation, Bach couldn't help but be impressed by her poise. Regia Leer stroked his wild beard with grease-covered fingers.
"And the identity of these attackers? Are you telling me that Imarinians did not cast this spell upon our land?"
She paused.
That is a complicated answer, glorious Regia Leer. Yes, these villains are from Imarina, but they do not represent our nation, my father, or me. We believe them to be a rogue faction within the House of Magic.
The House of Magic?
Regia Leer raised a ring-pierced eyebrow.
The same House of Magic that answers to King Isbiano. How would sorcerers concoct such a plan without your father's approval?
Regia Leer stood over Isabella, shouting down at the diminutive princess. She waited for him to finish, and only then spoke.
I do not know. But we believe my father is in terrible danger from these rebels. That is why we must return to Ithanel.
Regia Leer grabbed a piece of meat from the plate held by the servant girl and gulped it down in a single bite, again licking his fingers afterward.
You will go nowhere. You and your friends have attacked my nation, and will be treated accordingly.
Isabella's eyes flared.
Are you threatening me, glorious Regia Leer? I am Imarinia's crown princess. Harm me, and our forces will destroy your marauders by week's end.
Oh, no! I am not threatening you, little princess.
Regia Leer's belly shook as he laughed.
You are far too valuable as a hostage. Your friends, on the other hand, will hang at sundown. Well, that's not good if you happen to be one of the friends.
Bone Dog, how are you? Good to see you.
You get to hear me practicing my different accents.
I am just guzzling through water today.
It's so hot. So hot.
See, how hot is it now? Oh. 82 still? 82 I guess isn't bad. It is a little warm for a little office, but
we persevere, do we not? I believe we do by the Lord's work.
Let's say, any thoughts or questions from anybody? No, and no.
All righty. Then we continue our story. Unabated, together, reading as it should be.
Chapter 30.
We're going to die. I'm going to die. And my family would never know what happened.
Bach strained against his bonds. The ropes bit into his wrists, cutting his flesh, but they would not budge. Not that escaping was much of an option. Regulaire, his entourage, and most of the soldiers left the hut following his death sentence proclamation. But 2 soldiers, including the leader of the Masork band they encountered in the woods, stayed behind to guard the group until sundown. At that point, they would be escorted, carried, if necessary, to makeshift gallows at the edge of camp, where they would be hanged one after another until all 5 were dead. Bach's chin fell to his chest as his heart continued to race. The Masork leader patted Isabella on the head.
And you will be there to watch your friends die.
The princess defiantly jerked away from the guard's hand. The male guard pointed at Bach, a vindictive grin on his face.
Look at how that un shakes.
Bach tried to stop his hands from trembling, to no avail.
Yes, I'm scared. I do not want to die.
Turning away from the hostages, the guard then produced a deck of cards from his boot.
Care for a game?
The woman commanding the raiding party sat down across the table.
Typical Imarinian coward. They all deserve to die like dogs. And yes, I'd love to take your share of the reward money the glorious Regulaire has promised.
The man laughed, then dealt the cards.
What are we going to do? Kotarian whispered. I've been betrayed by a girl I've known since I was 14 summers, and I cannot perish in this backwater before I avenge that slight.
He shook even worse than Bach, and his eyes bulged. The sorcerer's haughty veneer of arrogance had been stripped away by the promise of imminent death.
By the Exalted One, he's right.
We can't give up, Aventil added. Isabella, if you can get a finger under my bonds, maybe I can loosen yours and we untie each other. With one eye on the guards, they started to move ever so slowly, inching across the straw floor until they were back to back. Bach's heart pounded as the lovers struggled to loosen the other's ropes. Like them, he kept a close watch on the guards. When the woman turned to check on her prisoners, Bach quickly interjected. Lost enough money yet? To draw her attention away from Isabella and Aventil.
Silence, cur!
Her gold and silver chains bounced as she snapped. When the guard turned back around, Isabella gave Bach the slightest hint of a smile in recognition of his quick thinking. She and Aventil continued to work on each other's bonds, and after 10 excruciating minutes, he partially freed one of her hands. Hands that commanded the immense power of high magic. Bach lipped his lips.
Come on, Aventil.
With a few more minutes' work, he hopefully could loosen the ropes enough for Isabella to cast a spell. Those guards might not be so arrogant then. But everything changed on a cruel fluke. The Masork guard dropped one of her cards. When she leaned over to retrieve it, she noticed Isabella's ropes drooped off her wrists. The pink and black-clad marauder jumped from her chair.
"Ya dishonorable dishrag!"
She grabbed the princess by the collar of her shirt and lifted her off the ground. Isabella's feet dangled 6 inches off the floor as the Masork leader pulled Isabella's face into her own.
"There is no escape from here. Do that again, and you will join your comrades on the gallows."
Isabella's voice rose in pitch.
"I'd rather die beside my brave friends than live as your captive. Your fate has already been decided by the glorious Regulaire. You must leave, but he never said I had to be gentle."
The Masork flung Isabella across the room, away from Aventil.
"Ah!"
she cried as her back hit the floor, the thin layer of straw providing minimal cushion. She laid there, unmoving. Although still bound, Aventil bolted to his feet and raced toward the fallen princess.
"Devils! You can—"
The other guard's heavy boot slammed into his midsection. He, too, collapsed to the floor, gasping. Isabella gained enough strength to lift her head. Her long hair spilled wildly around her face.
Stop! Don't hurt him!
The Masork woman pointed at her.
You stay on that side of the room, away from your concubine. If either of you moves again, he dies.
The guard sat back down and resumed their game.
Ha! I take your bird again,
the man exclaimed, causing the woman to throw her cards to the table in disgust. Bach's body went slack, all air leaving his lungs. Our one chance of escape gone. The laughs, shouts, and other exclamations from the guard's card game provided the only sounds for the next few moments. The serving girl slipped back into the tent, carrying a heaping plate of meat and a sloshing jug of red wine. She sat both items in the center of the table and poured each of the guards a full cup.
Better eat as much as you can, the man taunted through a full mouth. The way I'm going, you won't be able to afford dinner for some time. Shut up and drink your wine.
The Masork woman roughly pushed the servant with the hard toe of her boot.
Keep this coming. I worked up a thirst tossing around that flower-smelling girl.
The servant simply nodded and knelt by the table, head still down toward the floor. The card game, and the accompanying silence of the prisoners, continued for a few minutes, allowing Isabella and Aventil to sit upright again to reclaim at least a little dignity.
Bach, there is something I must tell you.
Isabella spoke quietly as their captors stared at their cards.
I hope it is a plan to escape.
The princess paused, swallowed, then sighed heavily. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could continue, Aventil nudged her shoulder.
Hey, that guard has fallen asleep.
Sure enough, the guard who had kicked Aventil moments earlier now rested his head on the table, eyes closed.
Lousy bastard. Think you can get out of losing by falling.
The woman didn't even finish her thought before her eyes rolled to the back of her head. The servant girl checked both guards to ensure they were deeply asleep. Then she put her hands on her hips and giggled.
I got to tell you, I done some doozies in my life, growing up on the streets and all, but nothing quite like this.
As one, Bach and Isabella looked at her, eyes wide.
Umrah!
She took a dagger from one of the guards and cut the bonds holding each of the prisoners. They all rose to their feet and stretched, save for Corrigan, who remained seated. Wingate collected the guards' weapons and used the ropes to bind their former captors.
Isabella, are you hurt?
Aventil ran to her side as soon as Umrah freed him, but the princess waved him off.
I am fine, she insisted.
Aventil recoiled.
I just wanted to make sure you weren't hurt, my sweet. I said I am fine, Aventil, and I do not appreciate you always treating me like a porcelain doll.
Isabella bit her lip. Bach could tell she regretted the angry words the instant she spoke them. Aventil froze, then stomped to the other side of the hut.
Point made. Forgive me for being concerned.
Aventil, wait. But he had turned his back, crossed his arms, and withdrawn from the conversation.
Best let him be, Your Majesty, Corrigan cautioned. His pride's hurt, but he'll calm down.
She sighed. I am sure you are correct, Commander. For now, let us focus on escaping this awful place. Isabella massaged her bruised wrists.
Do not misunderstand, Umrah. We certainly are grateful. But how did you find us? And how did you... Well, how did you do all this?
She gestured around the canvas hut at the guards sleeping on the table and severed ropes now on the floor. Umrah grinned.
I've always been one to push my luck. I've been following you since you left Nassim. I wasn't ready to give up and figured I might prove myself along the way. Reckon I was right about that.
I'll say. Bach rubbed the back of his sweat-soaked hair. But I'd still love to get my healer's bag back.
I might be able to help with that too. They're storing all your things with the horses in the stable out back. As for how I got in, I've been a servant since I was old enough to hold a tray and pour a drink. We got a way of being invisible around important people, and I've gotten real good at it. Wasn't hard to blend in, especially once I snagged this uniform and put some colour in my hair. Isabella put her hands on the young woman's shoulders. You are amazing. But all those soldiers we saw weren't looking for a lone servant girl. They keep their eyes open for important folks, like yourself. But every city, every palace, every camp has a servant's entrance round back, so that folks like me can come and go without getting in the way. Umar then held up a small green glass vial. As for the guards, your majesty, Lord Guternarel takes these sleeping powders every night. Mix 'em with wine, it'll knock a body right out. That is incredible. Isabella's voice rose barely above a whisper. Umra, I promise your courage and loyalty will be rewarded once we return to Ithanel. Umra looked away from the princess. About that, your majesty. It ain't like I'd turn down a big pile of gold, but I didn't do this for any reward. She paced around the hut, collecting herself and her next words. You see, I seen how you treated Mr. Bach like he was one of your own. I been an orphan since I was 6 summers, sleeping in doorways and begging strangers for scraps of food. As soon as I could, I got a job washing pots and scrubbing floors for a noble-class family that thinks I ain't fit to be scraped off their fancy shoes. I don't know. I just hoped maybe there was a place for me, too. Isabella said nothing. She just wrapped her arms around Umra's neck and let the servant girl rest her face into her shoulder. Bach felt tears well up in his own eyes when the princess said, And you do, dear girl. You will never leave my side again, Umra Sel. Aventil gently interrupted with a hand on Isabella's arm. Yes, well, we are indebted for your help, Miss Umra. But shouldn't we be getting out of here before Reja Leyers returns? He peeked around the hut's canvas flap into the compound's yard. Yes, we should. Isabella let go of Umra and wiped her own eyes with a lace handkerchief. Kotarian, you and I will use illusion spells to temporarily disguise all of us as Masok in Moradas. Kotarian flexed his fingers. Your Majesty, you have one good reason why I shouldn't burn this miserable place to the ground. Because, inadvertently or not, we are trespassers on foreign soil, and doing so could be considered an act of war. Do you understand, Kotarian? He sighed. Fine, but what if we are discovered? In that case, Kotarian, just save something for me to burn too. You gotta love the people who just show up to save the heroes. And we continue on, ladies and gentlemen, with Chapter 31. Isabella and Kotarian gathered the group in a circle and chanted. When they finished, Bach's companions didn't appear any different. But when he looked closely at his own body, it shimmered slightly, as if his eyes were out of focus. Kotarian explained, To those outside the spell, we will appear as Mosok soldiers. We need to move quickly, however. Gurmarian's generative guise will only last for 15 minutes, 20 at the most. The group split in two and headed in opposite directions. Your horses and things are right over here. Umra pointed toward the stables. Oh, Rajalair thinks you're still tied up back there. Yes, for now, Isabella said. But if he discovers we are free, the Masorks shall lock down the camp. We need to get far away from here before that happens. They stepped out of the hut, Umra in the lead. "'S all clear," she called back after making sure no additional guards loitered around the hut's entrance. They walked in a straight line toward the stables, passing Masork soldiers, as well as family members, camp servants, and various hangers-on. Some were working. Cooks prepared meals, armorers sharpened swords, but most of the crew seemed content to drink, gamble, and gossip. Impromptu shoving matches and belching contests broke out across the patchy grass field. Bach had never seen anything quite like it. The whole camp seemed to be a hornet's nest of heavily armed, intoxicated, and unsupervised criminals. Bach took a deep breath and shook loose his wrists, which still hurt from where he had been bound. Act natural and call no attention to yourself. That plan lasted all of 30 seconds.
"Hold it right there!"
A voice boomed behind them, and they all stopped. Bach's heart raced. Even with Isabella and Kotarian's magic, plus Wingate's sword arm, fighting their way through this mob would be suicidal. They turned to see a single Masork marauder, thumbs tucked in the waist of his pants and a giant grin on his face. And it was directed at Isabella.
"Don't walk away so fast. Are you new? I know I would remember your face."
Color rose in Isabella's cheeks. Well, Isabella's formal speech patterns would give her away if she said too much.
"Yeah, she's new, and I'm showing her around,"
Bach interjected.
"Maybe I want to show her around. Who are you, anyway?"
The marauder slid his hand down to the knife tucked into the top of his tight pink and black trousers. Bach considered his words carefully, knowing the wrong response could bring the entire camp down upon them. He also noticed Aventil's coiled posture. But before anything could happen, Wingate stepped beside Bach, hands empty but powerful arms crossed. The marauder eyed the mountainous guardian. Although he had a weapon and Wingate didn't, the Masork took the first step back. He frowned and backed away.
"This isn't over. I'll see you again, when you don't have your giant friend to help."
"Not if I can help it," the man continued to glare, but let them continue on their way. "I'm sorry to interrupt you," Bach told Isabella once they were out of earshot from the marauder. "It's just—" "No, I'm pleased you did. I can fend off suitors at the royal palace with practiced ease, but a shirtless cutthroat is beyond my training, Bach." "We're almost there." Umra pointed to the stables. Well guarded, the lean-to sentries faced the perimeter of the camp, expecting trouble to come from the outside. They didn't realize their apparent colleagues instead were Raja Lair's prisoners under a magical disguise. Still, one of the guards scowled at the people moving horses and equipment from under his watch.
"What are you doing? Who sent you?"
"The captain sent us to bring the prisoners' horses and things," Umra promptly replied in a voice completely unlike her Nassim-born serving-class accent. "The glorious Raja Lair wanted him to see if there's anything we could use for ourselves." At the mention of their leader's name, the guard's posture stiffened.
"Oh, carry on then."
He walked outside, giving the group free run of the stables. Bach's face lit up. "That was great, Umra. You had them completely convinced." She cackled. "I've had to talk my way out of a few jams. I'll tell you about 'em over a glass when we get back to Ithanel." They quickly collected their belongings and unhitched their horses. Bach sighed in relief to find Becky not only unharmed, but also well-fed and with fresh water. Masork marauders may be ruthless warriors and bandits, but they clearly care for their animals. Wingate helped Corrigan onto his horse, and they navigated their way through the campsite and back to the trail, just as the spell wore off.
they raced through the pine forest, back the way they came. Hooves clomped down the narrow trail worn through the woods by centuries of travel. The sticky, humid air clung to Bach's already sweaty clothes. Isabella urged her horse forward. Only a few more miles to the border. Then we can return to Ithanel and find Tavano. They had not ridden 5 minutes, though, when the sound of hooves echoed behind them, faint but growing louder.
Blast! They must have discovered our absence, Kotarian moaned.
Kragan drew his sword.
No sense in running. We'd never get back to Imarina before they catch us.
Isabella slowed her horse to a halt. Then we make a stand. Aventil chose an arrow, while Kotarian prepared a spell. Not sure what to do, Bach ready to push pull spell and watched as the cloud of dust moved closer. Within less than a minute, the dust cloud became a Masork raiding party, and this time, Raja Laer led the group.
Ho ho, little princess!
He called his group of a dozen soldiers to a halt just yards away from the Imarinian group.
Our camp is back this way.
He jabbed his finger over his shoulder.
Fortunately, Wenebo Pran was able to track ya.
A man with long, grain, but still pink and black streaked hair and a matching wild beard nodded. Kotarian cracked his knuckles.
Wenebo Pran, you are a sorcerer of some repute. Of course, everything I've been taught has turned out a lie. Perhaps your reputation will be as well. Your spell signature tells me you are Katarian, acolyte of the Imarinian House of Magic,
the raspy-voiced man replied.
But I do not know your reputation. You will, Masork.
Kotarian's hand crackled with blue-green mystical force. Seemingly from nowhere, a strong wind began to gust at Bach's back, and the skies around them darkened. Hurricane gusts blew at Bach's back, nearly knocking him to the ground.
Let's see how these Masork ruffians like Kalian's calamitous cloudburst.
Kotarian moved his arms back and forth to gather strength for the storm. On the other side of the standoff, Wenebo Pran calmly spoke similar words and conjured his own version of a contained storm. Whether it was as strong as the one Kotarian had prepared seemed irrelevant. At this short distance, it would be more than sufficient to blow away Bach and his friends. The storms kicked up golden-brown pine needles from the forest floor and whipped them into the air. Skinny trees swayed violently. Bach's eyes moved from Kotarian to Wenebo Pran and back. The two sorcerers engaged in a deadly staring contest, each waiting for the other to cross an imperceptible threshold before they unleashed their destructive spell.
Kotarian, please,
Bach insisted. Don't make this any worse than it already is. My friend is correct, glorious Raja Laer, Isabella yelled over the sound of the gale. We share an enemy and a problem. If you allow us to stop the evildoers behind the blight, you will protect your people as well as ours. Raja Laer scratched his hairy belly absent-mindedly.
Perhaps ye are telling the truth, but I have a squadron of Masork marauders behind me. If I allow you to leave, I risk losing face with them.
Isabella gestured to the riders flanking the Masork warlord. Ask them then. They may understand that mercy can be wise and blind violence foolish. The warriors said nothing, but neither did they dispute what Isabella had said. At her signal, Kotarian slowly powered down his spell. Wenebo Pran did the same in response, although neither sorcerer ceased their spellcasting completely. Isabella continued. Now I will tell you something that shames me deeply. I told you a rogue group of Imarinian sorcerers is to blame for the blight. Well, we have discovered their leader is Salandrian,
Dean of our own House of Magic. One of my father's top advisors is behind this assault on both our nations.
Unebo Prawn's eyes grew wide.
Glorious Rejalair, I know this Salandrian. He is the keeper of Imarina's magical knowledge. If he has turned against them, he poses a grave threat to your empire.
Isabella jumped in. If the Blight is such a threat, why not allow us to risk our lives instead of Masork ones to stop it? Or the Blight and those behind it may prove too dangerous for us to defeat. If so, your death sentence will be carried out. You win either way.
Rejalair thought quietly for a long moment. No one on either side of the standoff dared to speak a word. Finally, he broke his silence.
Very well, little princess. Had you slain any of my soldiers in your escape, I would have been forced to exact revenge. But you spared my sleeping guards who, despite their inept performance today, remain respected members of my mighty army. Go and fight these evil sorcerers, killing both our people. And little princess, I hope you win, for all our benefit.
All right, guys. We have made it through, quite a few chapters tonight. I am going to stop here. I hope you enjoyed the reading this evening, and we'll come back for the next one. The next reading should be Saturday evening. There is a chance I will need to move it to Sunday evening, and if so, I'll post it on my socials. But it will be this weekend, where we will continue the story of the Blacksmith's boy. If you have missed any of the previous chapters, the recordings will be available on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius. Thank you so much for coming along to join me this evening with our reading. Again, I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you guys all again, hopefully, very soon. Good night, everyone.